This is the Team Objection podcast for June 24th, 2021, episode 488. I'm not going to waste time on the intro. If you've been paying any attention whatsoever throughout this whole playoff run, you know what we're going to talk about today, given what happened earlier this week.
It's a Suns cast.
It's a Suns cast. You don't like a Suns cast? Turn the page. First topic. Hey, there was this thing called the Valley Oop, and we won game 2 in improbable fashion. And if anybody hasn't seen that clip, you absolutely should. It's going to go down as one of the best plays in Suns history. It doesn't take you very long. There's like on Twitter, there's like all the different angles one that's like 45 seconds. So if you haven't seen it, go look.
And the best one, which is a fan taking a video of the Valley Oop and then panning to Stephen A. Smith and Michael Wilbon going,
well, so that was a great one. They're just in shock. Mm-hmm. The other really good one is actually taken, I don't think it's a fan video, but it's taken from behind the shoulder of Jay Crowder so you can see. Mm-hmm. So I happen to be shooting around today, and I was like, I'm going to try that pass. I tried it about 10 times. I got it once. Every other time I hit the backboard. I didn't hit the backboard, and it was way too far over. It wasn't over the hoop. To get that, and the one time I got it, it went in because that's about like what it takes to throw that. It's insane.
It was crazy that Jay Crowder had a terrible, terrible shooting night. Did not play well shooting from the field, and then put the most important pass of the season right on the money in a way that Ayton just dropped it in. Like barely even had to do much after he jumped. It was incredible. And Jay Crowder's reaction to it was the best, with just a little fist pump and walk off. It was amazing.
I enjoyed the nonchalance. I think it's interesting because we really didn't deserve to win that game in one sense. We'll get to one of the senses where we absolutely should have later in the show. But just when you consider the factors involved, right? Down 1 with 0.9, you're not writing it off. You have a chance, but you can't imagine your probability is super high. 0.9 is maybe enough time to catch and shoot, but barely. It has to be a quick release, or it has to be something at the rim like it was. So in that moment, it was like, okay, sure, something could happen. But at that point, I think in my mind, at least, I was like, while there's still a chance, we've probably going back to LA with a split. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't like I was defeated, but when you're thinking about what the chances are, I was like, all right, we have a look, but man, it's unlikely we're going to do anything with it. So, all right, I'll start coming to terms with this. And instead, we just flip the whole narrative.
So, Chris, and I would even say the nature of the 1 point deficit. So it wasn't like we clawed back and we had the momentum. We actually lost the momentum at the very end of the game. That can be a backbreaker sometimes. And so to have the resiliency to execute absolutely perfectly on every level, the screen, the jump, the pass, of course. Ayton said that it was, Ayton said it was Crowder's game winner. I would say they split it about 50-50 because you have to have the athleticism to get up and the timing to get that ball in. And again, the window even on that end is pretty tight. So super credit to the pass. Great credit to the athleticism and the timing on Ayton. And, enough credit to our broken nose superstar taking a huge screen on a 7-footer right to the face to make that happen.
I saw a fantastic tweet by one of the local Phoenix radio people that said Scottie Pippen famously sat out a final play because he wasn't going to get the final shot. Our superstar set a back-breaking screen on a 7-footer with a broken nose to get his teammate the win. That tells you everything you need to know about how Devin Booker is.
Yeah.
I mean, Booker talked about it himself in the postgame. He mentioned, all eyes are going to be on him. If you're thinking about who's going to take a game-winning shot, especially with no Chris Paul, obviously Devin Booker's the first person that comes to mind. Like, Cam was on the floor and hadn't missed a shot all night, but he's not the first guy you're going to think of. And Ayton's on the floor, and he'd been playing well offensively, but other than the lob, you're not worried about him catching. I mean, what are you going to do? Shoot a turnaround? You don't even have time for that. So, to have the gravity, you need to have him on the floor, and he's able and willing, with a broken nose, to go up and to set that screen and enable the game-winning play.
It happened twice, too, because the play before that was a good pass by Booker to read the defense doubling him. But again, Booker made the pass, which could have been a game-winning shot, but he made the pass, and Jay made another pass to Mikal to get a wide-open 3 that Mikal could have very well hit. I mean, it was an open 3.
You know what, though? You know what I was thinking, Dave? That was like a blessing in disguise looking back because Mikal hits that shot. It's a great shot, and maybe that wins the game, but they have a quite a few seconds left on the clock to get it. Although they would have to go length of the floor,
second.
right?
They've gone one more second. It would have gone the length of the floor, and I'm guessing because it's a certain referee that we're going to discuss next little segment here. They would have reviewed whether it was a 3 or not, so they would have had about 35 minutes to discuss the play.
Yeah.
So
well,
maybe.
I guess my only point was he ended it in a way where there was no time. I mean, they didn't even get a shot off to that point. So, and why I bring it up, I don't really believe in this. But I will say, if you look back on a lot of famous playoff runs, LA with catching an air ball and laying it up for the game winner. That was against us, by the way. The Ray Allen 3, the Kawhi Leonard 4 bounce jump shot. Like certain teams on the championship run just tend to have something sort of crazy that will go their way multiple times. And we have often been the recipient of the other side of that. We have had things go against us. And I thought it was so poetic in a game where we had a player with a very similar broken nose that we figured out a way to get like a miracle play. And it took some help for Paul George missing 2 free throws. Choke job. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, he hit some big shots to keep them in the game, and he deserves credit for that. He also deserves some blame for missing 2 fucking free throws to clinch. So it was great to see. Like, we sort of have some kind of mojo on our side.
I agree with you fully. This team, every Suns team in history loses this game, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything went against us. Every single thing was, our superstar got a bloody nose again. Like, this happened in 2007. It happened again. Our all Hall of Fame point guard is missing because of COVID. We won game 1 because our superstar went nuts, and now he's out. And our backup is having the game of his life, but still we're losing in the last minute. We got a turnover that was like, how would you ever call that out of bounds on Booker when every other minute of the game that's not a turnover? So many things happened that every other Suns team in history loses this game because of any one of those things, and we get pissed off and say, man, if that would have happened and that would have happened.
Yep.
Instead, we're celebrating. And I haven't fully wrapped my mind around this. Like, there's still this minor part of me that all day today and yesterday when the game happened was just waiting for Scott Foster to like call everybody back and say, no basket, no basket.
I think Chris Paul has gotten a little bit too much credit for the Suns' success this season. That's a greater topic that we can speak on some other time, maybe. We've touched on it briefly in a couple of these. However, he and Monty deserve credit because this is exactly against the narrative that you would expect from a team that, for the most part, is making its first run in the playoffs. They don't have the experience. They don't have the poise. They haven't run into adversity like this before. So we're supposed to cave in these situations. When these things are going against us, this isn't supposed to spiral in just a 1-point loss. We're supposed to lose this game by 10. So credit Monty in particular, the coaching staff as a whole, and CP deserves some credit for having this team in a position where they're constantly being reminded of the bigger picture, constantly being reminded of taking things one at a time and like moving on from adversity, being level-headed, mature. It showed last night in ways that you wouldn't expect it to, and you can't really measure in a box score. Like, Monty is going to get credit because of the play he drew up that led to the alley-oop. But to me, and he even said this himself in the postgame, it's like, that was a play he had seen elsewhere and implemented, and it worked, so he gets credit. But like, to me, it's more about the culture, the teamwork, the camaraderie that makes this team so likable. Just a couple weeks ago, we talked about like which one's my favorite, which team. Like the 9-10 Suns were lovable and unexpected, and like that was like the one for me. The bench unit was so pleasing. I don't even think it's close anymore. It's only 2 weeks later, and I'm already ready to rescind that and be like, yeah, it's this team. I don't even care what happens from here. They could lose 4 straight. It wouldn't matter anymore.
Yeah. Well, and what I love is in the novel of this team, which I think starts, the epilogue is when Steve Nash is the epilogue of the previous book. Steve Nash is winding down, gets traded. The new book starts with a decade of misery. The prologue probably goes a little too long. The point I'm trying to make is, that I love the poeticism of Jay Triano drawing up a play during our dark years, and this is throwing back to that play now where everything's on the line and we're good. And to me, that's just like that symmetry in sports that you get sometimes. It's like, this is why I follow. This is why I deal with a decade of misery, is for these like storylines that emerge, and it's excellent. I don't know. It's amazing.
With the one link between the dark days and the light, Devin Booker.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's kind of his book so far until he demands a trade from Phoenix. It's kind of his story, as I would kind of say with Steve Nash's story, the previous installment of the Suns saga. This is kind of Devin Booker's story, and Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton and Michael Bridges. I'm so glad they get to be a part of it, but it's Booker's story,
and it's so refreshing to see all of these people on this team step up in a way, like Chris said, like we didn't really necessarily expect. I mean, Cam Payne, game of his life last night. I mean, he was a leading scorer, for God's sakes, for the Suns.
Yeah.
9 assists, no turnovers. He played like Chris Paul.
It was unreal.
I mean, his stat line was Chris Paul. Cam Johnson, 5 of 5, hit 2 or 3 gigantic baskets in the fourth quarter. The three-pointer and a pull-up, that was in the third quarter, but a pull-up free throw line jumper went right after Devin Booker went out with his bloody nose. Like, DeAndre Ayton obviously played. Dario Saric got 11 points off the bench. We had so many people that stepped up on a game where we shot 6 of 26 from 3. We shot terribly from 3. And yet somebody stepped up at every moment we needed a basket.
We're getting to a point that I do want to talk about, but I want to say, do you know who's responsible for Cam Payne's game? 90% Cam Payne. He played great poise. I know his story. He worked so hard. It's wonderful. Devin Booker, I know he played bad, but it's because he drew so much attention from the defense that it allows someone like Cam Payne, who is going to come in with poise, to just kill him, because he gets the less rigorous defensive assignment against him. He has a little bit more open lanes. They're more worried about Booker. They're leveraging the entire defense against Devin Booker, and he struggled, but he helped open it up for Cam Payne. And that's the winning team mentality. I don't know. It's not Devin Booker forcing his way through double teams and hacking up bad shots. He's willing to trust his teammates.
Should I transition here? Because I can make this into a transition.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll just mention, since we didn't get a chance to talk about it, game 1, and going into game 2, Ayton, I just have to mention him and his everybody begged him to dunk. Everyone was just saying, why is he finger rolling? Why is he not throwing it down with authority? I'm not sure what changed in him, what caused this, but he is turning into someone who wants to make himself known around the rim. I mean, he had 2, an alley-oop where he basically jumped over Zubac, which in the first quarter, which was fantastic. He had another one where he jumped over Rondo, I'm pretty sure, that Booker fed to him in the fourth. He had a stretch in the third where he was stopped the Clippers on 2 straight possessions and scored on 2 straight possessions, or at least got a rebound to McHale.
Huge block on that in that sequence.
Huge block. I mean, he had a stretch in the third quarter where he just took over like a 2-minute stretch of the game. He has been potentially probably the third best player in this entire series overall.
If you're looking at both ends of the floor, I think it's not close.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
He's been incredible. He's been absolutely incredible. And he's just doing what comes to him and is jovial about it. That article he wrote in the Players Tribune was wonderful. And it to Chris's point, that's what makes me love this team more than any other team, is the fact of how much they seem to like each other. And that's so good. Like these Clippers team, they get along. I don't see them liking each other like this. Because they Pat Beverley probably.
No one likes Pat Beverley to begin with.
Yeah.
That's a great point, and I just kind of trust Ayton now. Like there was one where he dunked it, and then there was one he went up. He probably could have dunked it, but he kind of did like a finesse, like up and under layup. And I'm like, that's fine. You felt like that's what you needed to do with what the defense is giving you. I trust you. Go at it. And I find myself notably being like, okay, these are the non-Ayton minutes. Yeah. And like just saying that phrase shows you the value that he has right now.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting to see how far he's come. And you know what? Good for him. I expect, regardless of how this season ends now, I expect that next year we're going to see him scale it back another 10-15% because he really shouldn't be going this hard all season. And then people are going to have the same complaints. And it's like, why not make it rise more when it counts? I'm not saying you should flip a switch. It's not an all or nothing proposition, but if you can edge your game up 10-20% come playoff time,
How many players
Toast.
do that? Like, does LeBron or
Everyone.
Kawhi go 100% all season? Like, no, they famously don't, and they turn it on the playoffs.
Yeah, and he knows that he has proven that he can do this, and he's got his next contract set up. He's got all he needs to do is now refine aspects of his game. He has the IQ for it now defensively, and I think that's his moneymaker is his defense, and his offense is just going to continue to improve. I think.
My small quibble is I do think the addition of Chris Paul has been huge. I think it's been huge, and a lot of credit goes to the pre-Chris Paul team and Monty. But I know when Chris Paul, he's never not yelling at Aiden. Like, we'll be up 30 points in a meaningless game, and Chris Paul will be yelling at Aiden to, like, here's what you got to work on. You bosh this play or whatever. And I think he has accelerated the timetable for a bunch of our guys in maturity and poise. Raja Bell, interestingly, there was a question: are the Suns a contender? And this was, I think, before round 1 started. Are they a contender this year?
Mm-hmm.
He said no, and I didn't have a huge beef with him because I thought his reasoning made a lot of sense. He's like, they're really good. I like them a lot, but that experience matters so much, and we are playing as though we have all the experience and poise in the world. So, I'm amazed. I mean, they're blowing me away, and I'm a homer of a fan, and they're exceeding my pretty lofty expectations.
To the extent that Ayton is now yelling back at Chris Paul in the huddle, and Chris Paul is saying, "Yeah, you're right. I deserve that because you were right about what you're yelling at me for."
It's great.
Love it.
You love to see
every
it.
second of it.
Yep.
My transition doesn't work quite as well as it would have 3 minutes ago,
That's okay.
but I'm going to launch into it anyways because I'm a professional. One of the other things that Booker did with his game that doesn't look as good on the score sheet is he had the 7 turnovers, but in large part those 7 turnovers came from 3 offensive fouls, all of which were horseshit. So now we launch into the part of the program where we talk about Scott Foster being the worst official in all of sports. And this is a topic that I think Dave especially wanted on here, but I already had him covered. So, yeah, go ahead. Go nuts on Scott Foster. It's your turn.
He was the superstar of the game last night. It is who we came to see, was number 48 in gray. There's just something. There's the history, obviously, of I think it was 0-11 or 0-12 in games that Chris Paul played, where Chris Paul has never won a game in which Scott Foster was the lead official. Technically, I guess that streak is still alive because Chris Paul didn't play in this game.
Yeah.
But whatever. There's the fact that Scott Foster has been very much linked to Tim Donaghy. Again, bring back flashbacks from 2007. There's just so many things last night that happened that flashback to 2007. There's the fact of bullshit calls, like Chris says. And then there's the fact that last 90 seconds of that game took 33 minutes because Pat Beverley can somehow ask for replays. Because all the Clippers can just go up to ref like Scott Foster and say, you know what, I think that was off of him, and we'll spend 35 seconds or we'll spend 3 minutes looking at a play that's like, man, 46 minutes of this game every time except until the last 2 minutes. That's a out of bounds on Pat Beverley. Suns ball play on, but because Beverley hit it and Booker kept his finger on it for another microsecond, well, I guess Booker touched it last. So by the letter of the law, there's so many things.
I have so many quibble. I mean, you're absolutely right. Chris, okay, for example, in the one where Paul George threw a terrible inbounds pass, I don't know what he was thinking. He should have been punished, and he wasn't. But the truth is, I mean, Chris was looking at it. It took you, 10 seconds, Chris, to be like, yeah, I think that's out on Ayton.
I agree.
Why did it take the officiating crew, who you would think has more angles and more technology at their hands, like fucking 5 minutes to look at it? Why? Just, there should be a limit. You make the best call you can. Did I say minute or limit? Either way, there should be a limit of about a minute. Make the best call you can, and then that's it. It should not go on and on and on, because what I think they're doing is they're rewinding the tape. They're looking at other things that could have and that, that's not it. And on the offensive foul from Booker, for example, what was that? They didn't call it. Yeah, I mean, I believe he hit Beverley because he had blood. There was no call on the floor. How rules is written, how can you go back and attribute an offensive foul to that? You shouldn't be able to.
I feel like I'm one who wants to defend referees as much as I can. I have officiated sports at a high school level. It's not much, but I've done it at least. Like, I've been in a sense where people don't like you. Nobody likes a referee. I get it. But you cannot stop a play with no call whatsoever. Just putting your hands up like, oh, he fell on the floor. Well, then call a foul. Like, you can't just stop play like that unless someone like has a heart attack in the court. Like, it just doesn't happen. It is such a terrible thing. That wasn't Scott Foster's fault. That wasn't him that did that. But still, like, I don't understand how a referee can stop a game in a situation like that without making a call. And then, well, shit, we made a bad call. We didn't call anything. So let's go to the video and figure out what we missed. I don't know how they are working playoff games when that happens.
I feel like it's one of the few games where no matter what side you're on, you're like, that was a terrible officiated game. Now, the Clippers are going to think they're the grabbing in the jersey, and we'll get to that in a little bit, or, you know, this, that, or the other thing. It's going to be we're both going to feel like we're screwed, right? But, like, across the board, this has been a talking point for everybody of this was not a well-officiated game. Even if you think they got the calls right, the review just killed it.
Yeah, so anecdotally, I have somebody who works for me who was telling me today, actually, that he actually got his girlfriend to sit down and watch a Suns game. He's a fan, but, you know, having her watch was something that she wasn't super interested in, but given how far they've come, she was like, okay, sure. And like you mentioned, 33 minutes for the last minute and a half, 58 minutes for the entire fourth quarter, and his girlfriend's response was like constantly, what's happening? Why is this taking so long? It's not really clear. Sometimes we're seeing some of the angles that they're looking at on the broadcast. Sometimes we're seeing nothing, and we're just watching the two benches kind of loiter about as this review process is happening. This is independent of last night's result, and you can know that this is true, dear listener or viewer, because we won, as it turns out, so it's not even really sour grapes anymore. That's horrendous, and both teams have gripes with the officiating over the course of that game. I think the Suns were fucked a little bit more in the final 2 minutes, but ultimately that review process ended up saving them because it's what allowed Monty to draw up the play out of the timeout that won the game, right? So everything kind of has this ebb and flow, karma, whatever. My only point is this. That was borderline unwatchable. And if you're a new fan or you're trying to attract a bigger audience, that cannot be the product that you're putting out on your biggest stage or your second biggest. This is the conference finals, whatever. It can't be the way it goes down. So what to me, this has to be a more robust review process in Secaucus. This cannot be up to the officials on the floor. It needs to be more like the NFL. These calls need to be made within a minute time. That's it. You get a minute. If you can't determine something definitively by then the play on the field stands.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
It. This cannot keep happening. And I know a little bit. Maybe 30 seconds of each review process is them going back, checking clock, checking shot clock, checking like players on the floor. That was atrocious. And it should not be the way that NBA is, because the NBA is at its best when it's fluid and lively and active, and that's the exact opposite of that.
Well, it's the best to watch when it's fluid, and it's the best to, like, players. It's a rhythm game. And so what do you do in a player's rhythm? You know, if I'm Paul George and I'm looking for excuses for botching 2 free throws, I'm like, well, you know, getting iced for throughout the entire fourth quarter probably didn't help me a whole lot. So, I mean, it's awful. It's awful every way you look at it.
And it's awful for the people in the arena. I didn't get to go to last night's game. I very much considered just throwing down the money and just worrying about it later.
You should have, it turns out.
Yeah, I should have. But from every story I heard about people in the arena, nobody knew if the basket counted or not. Everyone in the arena thought that they were reviewing the basket to see if DeAndre's dunk counted. They were looking to see, obviously, who was on the floor, and that was the big problem, is that they thought that the Ty Lue basically tried to cheat and sneak on different players onto the floor when you can't sub after something like that.
Yeah.
But instead, everyone in the arena is like, are they going to wave this off? Are they going to screw us over? Is Scott Foster going to figure out some other way to screw over the Suns? Does he have money on this game? What is going on? And then finally, the jubilation that came, which is why I would have wanted to be there at the game, is when the PA announcer says, after video review, the basket counts, everyone just lost their shit, which would have been fantastic.
So let's talk about that for a second, because it kind of combines these first two topics. I told Shaun after the game that while I was excited, obviously, about the outcome, like just, you know, juiced about it in general, I almost felt like we were robbed. Yeah. In a sense, because there was this huge delay where, like you said, on TV it was really no clearer. Now, Jeff Van Gundy had the rule correct from the start, so, you know, he was talking to the viewers about how that's a good basket, there's no goaltending on an inbounds pass. Mm-hmm. But like you said, we don't know what they're reviewing. Yeah. And there's been so much ridiculousness over the course of the game in the fourth quarter that your first thought is, how are they going to try and take this away? And is this going to lead to an actual on-court riot if they do so? Like, is Scott Foster going to be executed on live television if he dares to overturn this play for no reason?
Yeah. Well, I had the same thing, just a little bit different. Like, ignorance is bliss. Michaela and Maisie watching the game didn't really they don't know enough about basketball to even really be worried about it. They saw the dunk, the time's over, and so they're cheering and clapping. And I, huge fan, more than them, am not cheering because I'm like, okay, how are they gonna screw us? They're talking. They ran to each other on the baseline, and I'm like, one of them is getting ready to tell the others that it doesn't count, and so I'm not cheering in this amazing moment. And it sucks a little bit, and I'm still look, I'm over the moon. It's great. It's just not as great as it could have been, and I'm a little bitter about that.
I agree wholly. I went and watched the game at a bar, and when Ayton dunked it, everyone lost their shit. But then we sat there going, "What's happening? What's going to happen?"
Yep.
We're just staring, waiting, and hoping, and it took away the magic of a game that should have lived in lore forever. I was almost had a better reaction to Booker's game winner against the Clippers last year in the bubble because I knew that game was over.
Yeah.
This one was, hey, we should win this game. We're going to win this game, right? Everything's fine. But there's that little nagging doubt in the back of my head that what if they don't? They're going to put 0.7 on the clock. What if Paul George hits a shot? There was something that held back that celebration, and it pisses me off. And I understand why they had to review the clock. They were right about the clock, but it just hurt.
I think it speaks to our distrust as Suns fans in general, too, because we're waiting for the other shoe to drop on our throats, right? Because then it's okay, they finally started to sort out who the fuck was in the game, and then it looked like they were going to inbound at midcourt, and we're like, no, you're going to inbound from there. It's going the what the hell's going So, it was all sorted out eventually. The one point I made to Shaun that I wanted to see what your reaction to, Dave, was imagine if for some reason we didn't score there, or they waved it off. Let's say they waved off the basket, so the play goes as intended, they put time on the clock, and now we're down 1. Remember when DeMarcus Cousins shoved Devin Booker and they didn't even look at it whatsoever, and it should have been a technical?
And they gave a technical.
Remember when it was a technical post game?
Yeah,
because it was.
And then all of a sudden, we should have a free throw to tie it.
Yeah,
and we don't. Can you imagine then? Forget the wave off of the basket. Then that happens in addition. I'm not kidding about the riot.
Yeah.
Well, and let's just really quick. The end of that game was wild. I think. Apparently, Booker shoved Rondo, which I didn't see. I've only heard about this after the game. And then DeMarcus Cousins shoved Booker. And then I looked Booker with a smile on his face, explaining to Rondo, hey, bitch, this is why this play counts. Let me explain it to you because you're an idiot.
Because I've done this. I've been there.
It was beautiful.
And, one last thing that happened with the officiating. I don't even know if this was necessarily the official's fault. And this maybe leads into our next segment. That last play when Mikal missed the corner 3 that could have won it, it went off. I thought clearly went off Terrence Mann. I thought Terrence Mann poked his hand out and poked the ball out of bounds. Someone else that we are about to talk about thought clearly it was off of Ayton, which I can't understand what you mean.
Despite
clearly.
Not having an angle.
And
so
that's my problem. How did we have no angle? We had no angle except the overhead shot that we always see in the broadcast. No other angle. Did the referees have another angle? I'm curious to know if they did. They should have. I don't see why we wouldn't have. But how did we, as viewers, not get another angle on that?
Yeah, I don't know. They showed the same one 5 times, and there's a photo of it going off of Mann, so I'm not super concerned about that call having been wrong in the retrospect.
I'm not either. I just would have liked to see a better angle on it.
Yeah, I mean, we watched 6 different replays in the last 2 minutes, and on one of them, we saw the ball go slowly off of Devin's pinky about 17 different times from 9 different angles, and another one that's arguably more crucial. It was here's an angle, I guess. We don't know. Put some time on the clock. Suns ball.
Can I just say, though, the problem also with the reviewing, if Booker had hit it out of Beverley's hands, and it was clearly... I'm coming through, I'm making a defensive play, hitting the ball. I'm the one putting the force on the ball that way. And it happened to technically go off his pinky last. I'm like, okay, but the intent of the rule, really, that should be Clippers ball still. So to have that one reversed because they did it in ultra slow-mo review rather than just the all sensibility that 99% of the rest of the game you would make that call, that did bother me a little bit too. The forearm Booker, I have a little bit of a quibble still because of the way that it happened.
More because of what happened live,
yeah,
not the review.
Patrick Beverley showed blood. He did get hit. It's probably a foul still, although I would also argue, Beverley, you have instigated this physicality the whole game. So if you take an errant elbow when so much of what you've been doing has not been called, maybe it would have been karma to not call that either. But it worked out, so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying the whole thing was a mess.
Something like that happened a couple years ago. I want to say it happened to Chris Paul, where there was a play where I want to say Chris Paul got hit on the arm and the ball went out of bounds. It's one of those plays that referees will do frequently. Like, there wasn't quite enough contact to call a foul, but I'm going to call it, offense is going to keep the ball because the defender hit his arm. It wasn't quite enough, contact to call a foul, but I'm just going to award the offense the ball still. But then when they reviewed it, you can't review for a foul, but you can clearly see it went off Chris Paul, the offensive player's hand last. So you have to give it to the defense. And it ruined what like I said, would happen every other minute of the game, except in that super slow-mo thing. Very similar to what happened with Booker, where every basketball court in America that doesn't have super slow-mo cans on it says, yeah, that's off the defender. Offense keeps the ball.
Yep.
It's bastardizes basketball in a way, and I don't like that. And I know there's people out there, well, that's the letter of the law. They got it right. I'm like, but they didn't.
No.
And letter of the law, like the first 46 minutes of the game, that is instantly a side out for the Suns, and nobody argues. Clippers don't argue. Suns don't argue. Everybody just goes, yeah, I knocked that out. That's off me. But because it's the last 2 minutes, Pat Beverley gets to sit there and spin his little fucking finger around in the air, which he can sit on now, by the way, because the ending of this game karmically ended up being just this massive fuck you to Patrick Beverley in particular, who also called for the replay that gave Monty the time of time to draw up the play.
Yeah, so thank you, Pat.
Was also in between that stuff going over to Suns fans and being restrained by his own teammates for talking too much shit because the man just refuses to learn that he can't talk shit till the game is over.
He's the worst fucking asshole too, because he's always the guy who he'll punch you in the dick and then he'll be like after the game, like, we're cool, right?
Yeah, hey,
no, we're not cool, and you're not gonna make me the bad guy for saying we're not cool. You're a piece of shit, and don't come talking to me. Like, we're done. I hate him.
The parallels between 07 continue because he's my new Bruce Bowen. He's my new, I hate your guts, and I know you beat the shit out of me if I ever tried, but I want to punch you in the face.
Yeah. Well, and so this all transitions, and so Dave and I both happen to call out Skip Bayless today for different reasons. I actually happened to watch his segment about the Clippers. Dave read the tweets. And let me just say what the benefit of watching it live is you can hear the emotion in poor Skip's voice as he whines and cries that this game was stolen from the Clippers. What were the two? Oh, I remember. Firstly, clearly it was out on Aiden. And you guys, his voice is straining against the microphone. It's brutal to listen to. I've never seen a grown man weep openly on television before. Yeah.
He's 69.
So he's crying, saying it was clearly off the 7-footer with reasoning that sounded to me like because Aiton's taller, it's out on him automatically. It didn't make any sense. And Chris has already rebuked this. There's a photo of it going out on Terrence Mann. So whatever. Then he says, because Ayton grabbed a jersey, which no ref, realistically, unless you're taking the jersey, literally throwing him into the ground, no ref is going to call it in the last play. And everybody knows that. And he famously in the same segment, Skip Bayless said, yes, I admit that Michael Jordan pushing off on whoever it was for that shot, we all know what it was,
Byron Russell,
was not a foul. And that was okay. But this was a foul because he grabbed the jersey. And that was the thing that just sent it over the edge. So I brought this up for a couple of reasons. One is, Skip, do you really want to, for example, super slow-mo all of Patrick Beverley's defense on this game? Do you want to see how, in actuality, both teams probably grab each other's jerseys, push off? It happens all game. It's playoff basketball, man. And I actually have another point, but I'm not going to get to that one yet. I'm going to keep it right there for now.
So like you said, I read his tweets. I read him post game because I mentioned that Eddie Johnson, God love this man. I love Eddie Johnson more than anything. Said that Devin Booker slapped Paul George in the face. He tweeted and said Booker slapped Paul George. Eddie Johnson responded to the tweet saying, "You come to Phoenix, I'll show you a slap." Which, thank you, Eddie Johnson. I love you, man. So that got me down the rabbit hole of looking at Skip Bayless' tweets because I don't follow the man. He's a person that just wants to stir the pot. That's his whole career. I don't know how his shtick is still popular with people. It drives me insane. But the entire tweet segment during this game, he acted like he is a lifelong Clippers fan. Like he is emotionally invested in the Clippers. Like he was a childhood fan. I do not understand how a national media member can act like that. First of all, I understand you have your biases, everybody does. But like you're not a fan of this team. You've been a fan of every other big market team. You have every national media outlet has downplayed the importance of the Suns, and now because a big market is down 0-2, you're gonna act like, or because a big market's still in it, the last big market is in it, you're gonna act like you're a huge fan of them and that they got robbed on questionable at best plays and be this upset and sure about it. It's a clown show. It's I don't understand why people continue watching it is my biggest problem.
It's so much of a clown show that I almost considered rebuking Shaun and not putting it as a topic because I don't think it deserves a time of day. I think Skip Bayless is a waste of fucking space, to be very clear. So, but I think the overarching point is still a solid one. So, like, forgetting just Skip specifically, it wasn't even the only slander we received this morning. I mean, both Milwaukee and Phoenix got caught by First Take as being like lousy cities because they didn't want the finals to potentially be there. And we've seen some of the disrespect throughout the year. Now, it's interesting because the undercurrent of NBA fandom, I think, actually is kind of in the Suns' corner. Unless people like abjectly hate Chris Paul, most of them kind of want to see him to win a ring at this point because he's had the long storied career. And it's a nice underdog story, and DA seems to be getting more and more likable by the minute, and Booker finally getting a national platform to show off his skills, and Monty's revered as this excellent guy. No matter what you think of his coaching ability, like he's one of the best character people in the NBA. So for the most part, there's this groundswell of support. And on Twitter, you can see a lot of people like liking all these tweets and stuff, supporting. But there's just these handful of high-profile people, maybe because the counterculture is so effective, that just won't seem to get off our dick. And that's starting to become a little bit frustrating because it's like, what do we have to do? I mean, yeah, we've beaten the team in each round so far that's been missing a player, but at a certain point, that's not our problem. We got to beat whoever's in front of us.
Yeah, and so, Chris, I actually brought it up because it was a window into sort of a transition to a larger thing. But I did want to talk about how pathetic Skip sounded. I also, Dave, I want you to hear, this is the most hilarious thing to me maybe I've heard in a few years. Skip saying, NBA, you clearly wanted the Suns in the finals. Good job. Can you? When were the Suns ever accused of being the ones that's like, oh yeah, the refs are fixing the game so the Suns can make it to the finals?
Literally,
like,
no, this is document. This literally happened. Like,
yeah.
The refs are fixing the game so we can't make the finals.
Yeah, the opposite of that. So we cannot. Exactly.
Yeah, that's why Chris Paul was not allowed to play, right?
Yeah.
To help the Suns. They held him out to be specific on the COVID protocol so that the Suns would make the finals. Yeah.
So that idea is actually specific to Skip, and I was just like, this is the funniest thing I've ever heard. I was just like, you've lost, if you had any credibility, which, you know, you threw away Kawhi's shoes earlier in the garbage, and now you're a super fan again. Like, I just want to throw that out there.
Let's be abundantly clear before we move off of Skip Bayless because he can go die in a fucking fire. If LeBron had missed 2 free throws in that situation, he would have talked about it for 14 straight minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for some reason, Paul George, because he's on the Clippers' dick right now, gets a pass. So
and I don't know why you can say, like, I don't think it's mutually exclusive to say credit to Paul George for keeping them in the game.
Sure.
While also saying, how do you miss 2 free throws to clinch the game? And you choked.
You did choke.
Both are true.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, maybe they're saying to the overall narrative, is this full pandemic P or playoff P now? I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's just black and white. I think he can get both credit and blame. So that was fine. But this was like the larger kind of point I wanted to spiral this into is like the media in general. And what I'm hearing a lot of, not everybody, but a lot of is, what I would expect is the Clippers, you know, it's not over yet. I'm a little worried because A, B, and C, but it's not over. What I'm hearing is like, no worries. Clippers are fine. And I don't understand. When then they talk about it, it's 2 things. It's 1, not acknowledging that we won without Chris Paul. Like, no one is just like, they just barely squeaked out 2 wins. And I'm like, yeah, 2 wins without our point guard. Like, who is just as important to the team as like Devin Booker. Like, they're kind of equal for different reasons. That's a huge thing. And then secondly, they're like, once Kawhi comes back, it's like, look, he's a weird fucking dude. I don't have any clue what's going on. All signs indicate he is not going to be back this series. If he does manage to come back, that's fine. I don't know why you're just counting on it, though. And so all of this is like, are people so... And I think it's because there is a level of casualness to media where they just like almost like look at the final score and they're not looking like who played, who didn't play. There's like, oh yeah, Suns, here's their roster. Clippers, here's their roster. And I'm going to make my judgment now. And it just bothers me. I don't know. It's like, it just gets at me that I'm listening to them for analysis and their analysis seems flawed.
And it's funny. I don't know if you were referencing this, but I listened to the Bill Simmons podcast this morning. He had the first segment on the Bill Simmons podcast. He had his friend Joe House on, who I don't care about his opinion.
I happened to listen to that today.
Yeah. And so the first 30 minutes was supposed to be about the Suns Clippers. He might have talked about the Suns for about 7 of those minutes.
Yep.
Maybe. He said that Ayton's playing really well and Booker might be the best player in the series. So he gave a little bit of praise. But the entire rest of the time was talking about how Ty Lue made good adjustments and how the Clippers are just going to be fine and how there's a bet out there where it's 11-1 odds that the Clippers will win in 7, and that's a great bet to take. I'm like, okay, like, yeah, but do you understand that we're up 2-0 in this series? The Clippers have to win 4 out of the next 5 games. Kawhi might not be back at all, and Chris Paul will be back in Game 3. Does nobody care about this, or is it just... hey, more people live in Los Angeles, so let's focus it on Los Angeles? Is it really that simple?
That's my point, Dave. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. That's exactly what I'm getting at.
You know how that's exactly the point? Because when Denver fell behind 2-0, they were done. Mm-hmm. Now, the Clippers are better than Denver in these 2 injured forms that we've played both of those teams in, okay, to be clear. But Denver's another smaller market team, and guess who gave a shit about them in the national media? Nobody. Oh. They know about Jokic and Murray, and beyond that, I don't know if they know who Will Barton is at a casual glance. So, like, that's the big difference to me. It was the same situation. We were home for the first 2 games. We won them both, and we had Chris Paul in those and not here to this point. I get that. But like you said, he's coming back. So to me, it's the same thing. The Lakers and the Clippers are the other 2 teams that we've faced besides the Nuggets. And it's interesting how the narrative has been different in those 2 series than it was against Denver, who... in my mind, it was playing really well without Murray through the end of the regular season and was still a viable threat. Now, we beat them pretty soundly, but I never went into those being like 100% sure we were going to win. Right. I was confident in our chances, but I wasn't writing them off. The national media wrote them off, but now the Clippers, in the same situation, down a star, have every chance to win the series. So it tells you what you need to know. It's LA, it's New York, it's Boston, it's the big markets, and screw the rest. We don't have time.
And I don't even need them to be like... it's over. Like, I don't need that, but like, I just would expect acknowledgement that it's a pretty bad situation. And some are doing that, and I totally credit them. I think that's good basketball analysis. If you're down 2-0, and then the team adds in their best player, how are you like, oh, yep, I feel great still choosing this team? It's like, you can still say it's not over, and the Clippers are capable, but I'm starting to get really nervous.
And, like, forget all that, which is all true. So forget all that's the wrong, like, segment to me.
Right.
But, like, Serge Ibaka's out for the rest of the season. Marcus Morris is clearly, like, 70% or so. It's not even just Kawhi Leonard, which would be a big enough issue on its own. They don't have any front court depth. And that's not going to improve over the course of the series unless Kawhi comes back. And then even if Kawhi comes back, the question becomes, how much Kawhi are they getting? Mm-hmm. We watched James Harden come back. We watched Mike Conley come back, and they were shells of themselves.
Don't forget Anthony Davis.
Yeah, they gutted it out. They tried, and then in some cases they couldn't even stay on the floor, and in some cases they could barely play, but they stayed out there because they were gutsy. And credit to them for trying to play, but like, is this going to be 100% Kawhi, the guy who's expected to be dominant on both ends of the floor the second he comes back? That's not what I'm expecting.
That's why I'm like, I mean, I have my own nervousness, and part of that is exacerbated because of, our history. But I would think most people are going to be like, it's starting to look like Suns in 4-6. And, I could be wrong. Maybe this is the kiss of death, but I'm starting to be more comfortable in rooting for them. I want to like enjoy, and if it means that I call something and then I'm wrong and I'm disappointed, like fine, but I don't always want to be like, I don't know, I'm still going to choose Clippers in 6. Like at some point I want to cheer for the Suns. And,
okay. Here's my call then to do what you want to talk about doing.
Okay.
Suns in 4. This series is over.
I like it.
You can use this clip against me if it ends up not being true. And I'm not saying the Clippers can't win another game in this series or multiple games. It definitely could, and Kawhi's a big factor in that if he could come back. I know we've kind of squeaked out 2 wins in various means, but again, Chris Paul's coming back. So color me unimpressed by the Clippers' effort thus far, and color me unimpressed with Ty Lue's adjustments, which is just throwing shit at a wall until we find something that works.
Yeah, well, and I don't actually, everybody's like, game one, skin of our teeth. No, I actually don't think that's true. There were some flukish last second shots. I never really felt like, oh my God, are we going to lose this game?
The Clippers made 23s in a game 7 times this season. They were 6-0 before game 1. Guess what happened in game 1?
Yeah. Well, and can I just say, people are saying like 9. So they call out our 9 playoff wins in a row, which is crazy, by the way. Like, what a great time to be alive.
And we've never done that, obviously.
Yeah, no,
it's the third best of all time. Our previous best was like 6 in all the Nash years and all the Barkley years and all that.
And Ben Simmons, instead of being like, or Bill Simmons, Ben Simmons is
no, he's gone. We don't think about him right now.
Bill Simmons, instead of being like, using that as like momentum and like a case for us, is like, so that's gonna regress. Like, they're in for like a decline. And like, I guess you can see it that way, but maybe you could be like, wow, this team is really impressive for winning 9 in a row. I think they're actually legit. But like, no, we're not.
You look at objective measures. The Ringer has NBA odds. The Suns are 57% to win the title right now. Yeah. They're the favorites. The clear, unbiased favorites to win the title right now. Surprisingly, the one national voice that has come around, because he didn't start out this way, is Colin Cowherd, who is generally 100% big market every way, shape, and form. But he, on his show today, said the Suns are equivalent to the 2013 Seahawks, where you're like, wow, this little plucky team come out, oh shit, they're really good. Yep. They're really good. And they're built for a long time. Because we are. Because our three out of our 4 main pieces on this team are under 25.
Yep.
We are set for years.
Well, Dallas Mavericks, Detroit Pistons, like we're starting to feel like we're teams in those veins. And it would be nice to get some, credit, but I will get enough credit when we win the title. So, that's okay.
It's going to feel that much better because I'm going to look back at the hate and the ignoring that comes from the national media and everyone downplaying us and say, I have a trophy. Fuck you.
Yeah. That was going to be the ultimate answer to the header question that I posed about what would it take to get some respect is I don't even really care.
Yeah.
Some is going to keep coming the more they keep proving themselves. And eventually, whether or not we get respect when we win a title, if we can win a title, I don't give a damn. Yeah. It's a title.
I will say, I went into it last night's game expecting to lose. I really did. I really thought that Booker played really well in the first game. Missing Chris Paul was going to be a hurdle. I really thought that we were going to have a hard time winning that game, and I would not have been surprised if we lost.
Well, Dave,
out with resilience.
Would you have taken without Chris Paul at home, the Suns, like before any of this, the Suns are going to split? You probably would have been like, I'll take that. I'll take one win without Chris Paul.
Yeah, I would have expected us to win one game because they're missing Kawhi. But yeah.
So we won both, and now we're adding the piece in after the Clippers played one really good game, and honestly, both teams did not really play good in the game too.
No, but whatever. Like, what is it going to take for us to get some respect? Having a goddamn trophy, fine. If that's what it takes, let's get it.
And how interesting that, like, all the parallels to those mid-2000s and the 2010 team that we've mentioned, this team might exercise all those demons, even though there aren't really any connections to those ghosts of yonder. If anything, like Shaun mentioned the book in the beginning about like Steve Nash and Devin Booker being the focal points of the story. The storybook ending would have been beating Steve Nash in the finals as like the final, the final thing to topple along the way. And well, the Nets died, but that's fine. So let's look ahead a bit. The Suns are up 2-0 as of recording. Game 3 is tonight when the episode airs on Thursday. They're in LA. Chris Paul almost certainly seems to be playing. I don't think it's been 100% confirmed.
I think it may have been now. In the last few hours, I think it's jumped to 100%.
Yeah, admittedly,
listed as probable, I believe, on the official.
Okay, well, if he's probable, he's playing. And that's the big difference for me, by the way, is like in addition to Kawhi coming back and being a question mark, Chris Paul is going to come back and maybe other than a tiny bit of rust, he should be 100%. He doesn't seem to be exhibiting any symptoms. He's not hurt. He's not nursing anything, so that's a big factor. Let's look big picture. Suns up 2-0. I'm already on the record as Suns in 4. We'll see how that plays out. I think at this point our expectation is the Suns make the finals. So what are you looking at for the rest of this series? And then what are you looking at as far as maybe your preferred opponent coming out of the East if you could choose? And by the way, as I say this, we're recording this on Wednesday night, so the day after Game 2. Bucks-Hawks is tonight. It's been going on. I think it's over. I haven't even looked at a score. I have no idea what happened in that game.
I'm going to do that right now.
Okay, yeah.
So Dave is looking
We'll
at
pull it up and we'll see. But, just with whatever result happened tonight in mind, even so, it doesn't really affect the fact that, like, what team would you rather see?
Hawks won?
Hawks 116, 113. Hawks
Holy
win.
shit,
That
dude.
sounds like a good one. I'll have to go watch the highlights afterwards.
Am I crazy? Okay, even without knowing that, I was getting ready to say, am I crazy for almost wanting the Bucks?
I want
over
the Bucks.
Hawks.
I'll full out come out and do it. We've owned the Bucks over the last few years. We have a Giannis stopper between McHale and between DeAndre Ayton. Like, I'm actually more afraid of the Hawks, and maybe I'm putting too much credence into the last time we played the Hawks and they raced us off the floor in Atlanta. But I feel like the Bucks are a team that we can control. I feel like the Bucks are the team that we've beaten in the past. We know how to beat them. They're good, but we have answers for everything they throw at us.
I don't want to read too much of that Hawks loss, though. That was like something like our I think it was like our 8th game in 3 days. Like, it was crazy, and and we were tired. Clearly,
check the tape on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw it. Like, I want to say we were hanging around by halftime, and then the wheels just came off because we were dead. So, but they still do scare me because they seem like a team that can get hot out of nowhere, and they've showed a lot of poise, which I'm surprised about. I don't know. I guess, man, it would suck to make it all the way to the finals and then lose to either of these teams, to be honest. I think if we manage to beat this Clippers team, between the Clippers and the Lakers, we've beat such awesome teams. Better teams, I think, than either the Hawks or the Bucks. So to then lose to either of these teams would be kind of heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Are we not worried about jinxing?
No, what are we gonna? I truly believe we have no impact, man.
We talked about the finals in the first preview that we ever did.
Yeah, you're the one who chose us for the finals, anyways.
Yeah, that was a prediction. That's different.
Yeah, your prediction is wrong too, but it's because Brooklyn failed their part of the market.
Yeah, it's not our fault.
Yeah. Trae Young, 48, 7, and 11 tonight.
Holy shit!
And the Hawks were only 8 for 32 from 3 in the win. For the Bucks, both Holiday and Antetokounmpo, 14 of 25 from the field, 34 for Giannis, 35 for Drew. Probably if you wanted to pin this on somebody, Chris Middleton, 6 of 23, looking like a scapegoat in a 3-point loss. For the Hawks, John Collins, 23 and 15 as well, as a nice backup for that. To answer the question I've posed, I'd like to think we could beat the shit out of the Hawks. And I think every round I've been thinking to myself, well, it must be some kind of fluke. And yet at the same time, their story sort of parallels our own. And at a certain level, we have to acknowledge the fact that they keep beating whoever's in front of them. So no matter how the outcome's supposed to go, whoever's supposed to be favored, they keep beating the team in front of them. I think the Sixers were more flawed than we realized, primarily because of Ben Simmons. But it's still a notable win to get past them. And it's only one game, but they won on the Bucks' home floor. So I guess, gun to my head, I would rather see the Bucks right now, which is a weird thing to say because I wouldn't have thought I was going to be scared at all of the Hawks about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's the funny thing that's coming out of this whole crazy run, this playoffs. Everyone gave so much shit to the Hawks and the Suns for not picking Luka. Oops. Who's still alive? Who's still playing right now? Who's causing so much turmoil that the entire front office has basically been fired in their city?
Yeah.
I posted something. I posted a reply to someone on Reddit a couple weeks ago and basically said, am I wrong in thinking that we dodged a bullet in the 2018 draft?
That's
and
kind of...
I got downvoted to hell. I want to point that out. Because why wouldn't I want a guy who can average a 40-20, 2 guys who can get a 40-point triple-double in a playoff game? I'm like, well, yeah, but the other guy does it at the same time. Like, we got a 20-10 from DeAndre and a 40-point triple-double from Booker. We're not getting 2 40-point triple-doubles at the same game from Luka and Booker. So that's stupid logic.
I'm with you because I, as you know, maybe to a fault, I'm a personality guy in the NBA, and I will make decisions based on fit and chemistry. And I didn't really, like, he's always kind of rubbed me a little bit the wrong way because, he's a front runner, right? Oh, everything's great, and we're laughing and we're joking, and then when he's losing, he rips his jersey in half like a kid. But it has been really exposed this year of he's just really difficult to work with. He's difficult to play with. He has opinions. He's not afraid to scream at his... He's entitled. And, I have to wonder if Booker... I know we're not comparing exactly the two because it's Ayton and it's Trae Young, but if Booker were to play completely heliocentric I feel like he could do something similar to Luka.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that brand of basketball is enough to take that team far unless he's willing to make a change or what. But, you know, he can have all the triple. It's starting to look like his triple doubles are empty stats, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Weird. You're 100% right. His team blew a 2-0 lead, winning 2 games on the road to this same Clippers team. How the hell do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, if you are the next coming of every basketball player and already a surefire Hall of Famer, you don't do that. And then you don't rip your team apart afterward. Like, it seems as though you are only going to go as far as Luka will carry you. And that's it. On this team, everybody contributes and loves each other. I'll take that every day of the week. And if maybe Luka is going to be this Hall of Famer and all NBA player for 12 years, fine. I'll take winning at this point.
And like you look at Porzingis and it's like, yeah, you know, maybe he hasn't panned out the way that they wanted. But then I look at that and I'm like, well, he was healthy this year. And yes, defense sucks. But how must that impact your game when you're just asked to go stand in the corner basically and shoot whenever I decide to pass it to you?
Goran Dragic.
Yeah, yep. Exactly. Exactly. And Goran Dragic wasn't done. He's having a nice career with Miami. So
made the finals last year.
It's starting to feel like maybe the problem's not Porzingis is all I'm saying.
The part of the problem is Porzingis. I don't want to go too much on the Luka hate train here, and I can't believe I'm going to be the one to say this.
Yeah, me too, man.
I think at 22, there's still plenty of time for him to mature and become a better leader, and the skill set is already there. Now, to this point, he has not proven that he can lead that team, and maybe that's too much to ask of a kid. It probably was for Devin Booker, too, because he was surrounded by a lot worse crappy-ass players than Luka is to this point in his career. That does feel like their ceiling is capped a bit, and maybe the coaching change with Carlisle leaving will help, but how much help can you really bring in when Porzingis is making that much money?
Yeah.
I also think there's a little bit overrated amount of Porzingis. They're never going to be able to trade him. I don't think we can say any contract's untradeable because all the big albatross ones we thought we saw that would be, like Chris Paul, like Russell Westbrook, twice, by the way, have all moved in the last 3 years. So Dallas could certainly find something and maybe they get better. The overarching point that I think is the most important, though, is that Ayton and Trey are still in this thing. At the very least, no matter what you think of Luka, you can't say it was a mistake anymore. Marvin Bagley, you might be able to say was a mistake. That one's not looking super good. Maybe if he ever gets healthy, he can show off too. But, I mean, are the Hawks going to be dissatisfied at this point? They're in the conference finals. No. Trey's budding superstar right now, even though his defense still sucks. Like, he's showing out. So I don't think either one of those teams is going to walk that back anymore. There was a time in Ayton's first season where I think even we were kind of like, boy, as Luka ascends and Ayton is doing pretty well, but only, we don't know. I think these playoffs have put that argument to bed once and for all, even if we don't win the title.
Mm-hmm. And the idea that we can acknowledge that maybe Luka is the better superstar, the better player, I'll put in quotes, Ayton's the fit.
Yeah.
Like, is what we need. Somebody out there I saw online, and I'm basing this off of stupid people sometimes, but like, if you replaced, you put Booker and Luka together and put Clint Capella on this team instead of Ayton, would we do better? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that the way this team is constructed, Ayton has blossomed into a anchor defensively for years and years and years, and is somebody that will just be here, and we will always have a shot with Booker and Ayton together.
And you just don't buy culture. I think that's the other part. Like, we have fostered a culture of defense and resiliency and chemistry and all these other things.
I thought that was only Kelly Oubre.
Yeah, and you just put like Luka on there. Do we have that? Like,
no.
Maybe in another way. Certainly not what we have now.
It's interesting because it's almost too far gone to adjudicate anymore. Like, there's probably no Jay Crowder, no Torrey Craig, no campaign.
Yeah, right.
Like, we have no idea what the trickle-down effect of moves would have been, even if that had happened, because it's too far removed now. But it's sort of like what you said. Culture is important. It's why this team is so easy to root for. It's why the nation, if not the media, is getting behind the Suns as they make this quest for the title, because the Mavs clearly did not have that culture. Rick Carlisle, who I think is a really good head coach, is not really the best with human stuff. And I think he's admitted as much. Like, he lost his temper with Luka a few times as well. That doesn't really seem to happen here. I mean, Monty's had to get tough with the guys a couple of times, but for the most part, everybody's bought in, and we're seeing what that's done. And Atlanta's the same way. I don't know if Nate McMillan is the cause of all this. I think it's a little bit underappreciated how many injuries they faced when they were still 500 when Lloyd Pierce was fired. But they also seem to have guys who want to be around each other. That, to me, is key because those are the teams I can root for the most easily.
How devastated would you be, to both of you, if we make the finals and lose to Atlanta? Would you actually be like, it sucks, but...
My amount of devastation would have nothing to do with the Hawks.
It would not be increased because of the Hawks. It would be whatever it was just because we lost the finals.
Or the Bucks, for that matter. I really don't dislike Milwaukee all that much either. I mean, Giannis has his flaws, but he also is quite likable. Drew Holiday is a stand-up guy himself. So, like, at this point, as long as the Clippers die, whether it's to us, hopefully, or one of the Eastern teams, then I'm not really going to be that upset with any of the champions. Obviously, I want it to be us.
Yep. Is it funny that I've seen so many national medias or big presidents saying how the NBA must hate this, that the cities left are Atlanta, Phoenix, and Milwaukee. It's like, or we have extremely likable teams who play really good team basketball and an aesthetically pleasing brand of basketball. Oh, the NBA must hate that instead of watching LeBron and his bricklayers throw up 30% from three-point line.
Ratings are up.
I was actually going to say, I don't know if it's good for ratings or not, but it's great as a viewer. And I swear to God, it's not just because the Suns are in it. How often have you guys heard me over the years being like, I don't even know what I'm going to watch. It's just like Golden State and and Cleveland.
And whatever team LeBron's on.
And again. And it's like, I'm just like tired of this. It's almost like a foregone conclusion. I love that all the teams left are not the favorites. Even if the Clippers win the title, which I would be disappointed for certain reasons, I would at least say, hey, at least we have a new champion. It's a city that's never won before. At least there's something fresh.
Yep. Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, I get that there's big media polls, obviously, like Steph Curry and the Warriors, LeBron and the Cavs, Heat, Lakers, whatever, are big draws, but... the only thing I'll say is this. I think people are overestimating this effect of the ratings being up just a little bit because compared to last season is a dangerous road to go down with the bubble having games on during the day on weekdays more often. Like, I don't know if it's apples to apples, but nonetheless, they're not down. Ratings are good. The NBA has to be pretty pleased overall. I don't think you'd want this every year, this level of parity, but for 1 year, especially given all the things that have come up in this particular season, it seems like people were on board for it. Even if the Suns weren't involved, I would still be interested in these other teams because, like you said, it's new, it's fresh, it's exciting.
Well, what's the effect in the NFL? Like, and I know across the board NFL ratings are higher, but I'm meaning relevant. There's another word I'm looking for, but anyways, relatively. Thank you. When you get to because it's always different. It changes a lot in the NFL. It's actually one of the very few things I like about the NFL is you can have a different champion like every year. Does that seem to negatively impact it if it's like...
Two of the most popular teams in the NFL are Green Bay and Pittsburgh. Those are tiny ass cities. Tiny.
Well, right. But like when it's like, let's say Kansas City and Tampa Bay. Yeah. Or like,
those aren't huge markets either, but people still turn out.
So maybe there's something to be said for like, it's interesting when teams that aren't just in the limelight all the time every year get a chance.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy with a lot of large media markets where it's like, hey, we talk about the large media and then wonder why no one cares about the small media.
Yeah.
But honestly, what the best thing about this season is, next season is going to be awesome no matter who comes out of this whole thing because we have storyline upon storyline. Young Suns bring, maybe either wins the title or fell just short. Hawks win the title or fell just short with this budding superstar that everyone keeps doubting. Giannis, finally breaks through or, got past the nemesis, maybe gets to the finals. So many storylines can come from this to just flush into next season with new superstars, a new generation of superstars.
Yeah, that's the coolest part.
Kawhi leaves the Clippers at a disgruntled heap when they fail in this series. So
comes and joins Devin Booker.
Yeah, he comes to Phoenix. I don't want Kawhi.
I know.
So, look, at the risk of sounding boisterous, I even mentioned in the last podcast that I think at this point we have to be considered the favorite. That's even more so true now, as Dave mentioned. I mean, we're up 2-0 even before... Now we know what happened in Game 1 of the Eastern Finals, but like even before that game was played, the Suns were up 2-0. That's an unenviable position to be in. It's a fast track to the NBA Finals. And look, we have sort of hedged the last 3 episodes about, we think this team is pretty good and we like our chances in this way, but we'll see what happens. We haven't lost a game since those 3 episodes have aired. I'm not saying we can't or we won't. I'm just saying, like, at this point, I feel like at least a little bit of confidence is deserved.
Nah, fuck that. We've got 9 in a row right now. We have 6 more wins to the title. That ties the all-time record for most playoff wins in a row. Ties the Warriors' record of 15 in a row. So let's do it, man.
My prediction is we're not going to watch more than 6 more Suns games this year. No. Wait. I will say 8. I will say 8 is the max amount of Suns games that we're going to watch for the rest of the season.
So we're losing 2 more games total the rest of the
Somewhere I could see at most, though. Maybe we just sweep out, but
wouldn't that be something?
8 games left. So it's funny to me that Dave earlier in the year was like, when we're looking forward to LA. To be fair, you actually chose us beating LA, so I'm not saying that, but you were like, if we lose, just imagine like our entire season is going to be over by next week. And now we're looking at the same thing, but on a very different perspective of, I mean, yeah, it's going to be over soon.
Because of the way the Eastern Conference Finals and the Eastern Conference Semifinals lasted, and with the Suns sweeping, the Suns might be done potentially. If we sweep, we're done Saturday. There is, which is the 6th? Yeah, Saturday the 26th is we might be done with. The Eastern Conference Finals might not be done until July 5th, I believe, is the potential Game 7. That means that we could potentially have 2 weeks off before the NBA Finals start on July 8th.
Which is too much.
Which is too much time. A week is almost too much time. 2 weeks is like...
Yeah.
But maybe for the Suns, you're like, don't speak for me. I would love that rest. Why do you think Booker could play 48 minutes here?
Yeah, I mean, they had a week of rest. They didn't come out rusty. They looked great in Game 1, and then they scratched out Game 2, and Paul's had a chance to get that shoulder, whatever was unhealthy left in it, looking better at the very least. So that's all a plus. I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, it's been enjoyable. No matter what happens, I don't think could have ever expected this at the start of the season. We were more optimistic than most about the Suns' chances, and even then we're like, like the 4 seed, maybe a little higher if everything breaks right, and like we win a playoff series, that'd be pretty cool. Well, we've gone past all that territory, and now I just kind of have my eye on the prize, and it's been fun. I mean, we've had more Suns basketball than we could have expected.
Yep.
We have at least 4 more games, God forbid, as many as 11. Could be cool either way. In fact, it's been weird because I'm like, where has my free time gone? And I go, oh, right, I have 4 nights a week somewhere in there where I'm dedicating 3 hours to this.
Or
and trying
5.
And like trying to get ahead of work as much as possible to make sure I have time. And so it's like, yeah, that's why I haven't gotten much else done. But I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I want to clarify just really quick. The Suns aren't going to play more than 8 games and win the title. I don't want to be like, we're going to beat LA and then we're going to get swept by Atlanta. And that's why. But I just want to be very clear. I think we're going to win. That's my selection right now, based on my own fan perspective, but also just like look at the basketball, like look at the product, look at us, and look at the other teams, and tell me like who is better. Like and everything. Credit to Atlanta, but the East has been an easier road, and they've gone through extremely flawed teams as we've seen, maybe more flawed than we realized. So I think when they hit the Suns, unless there's some weird injury that we have, I think we're going to steamroll them.
I said in our podcast, playoff preview podcast, the only team that scared me was the Nets. They're gone.
Yeah. So we'll see. And then when we go back and LA's won 4 straight, and we're going to be like, well, that hurts, but...
This is going to be a rough podcast next week.
Yeah, we're allowed to hope with our team. So...
I'm still so scared. I want to win a title. And
I was saying that to a lot of people today, where basically I'm scared because I think we're going to win the title, and because 36 years of being a Suns fan has taught me that I'm going to get punched in the gut, and it's going to really hurt, like more than any other gut punch the Suns have ever given me.
The road has never been more open than right now, like ever in our history. Like even the great Barkley teams, like they had Jordan at the end. I don't think you would categorize that as like, oh yeah, open. We have this in the bag.
Yeah, if anything, it was the 2 seasons against the Rockets that hurt more in that regard.
Yeah, that's
in
probably
'93,
true.
You lost to the Bulls. You went, well, the Bulls are fucking great, so that sucks. But hey, props to us. We fought hard, and they're just better. And then we blew 2 series leads against the Rockets, who won the title, sure, but like those were the ones that lingered. To your point,
what's awesome? Just one last thought from me. Then the next Suns home game is either Game 5 of the Clippers series or Game 1 of the NBA Finals.
Mm-hmm. which
It's
we're going to have
amazing.
to look at. So to that point, I don't know what next week's show looks like. It's been sort of a revolving door of not entirely knowing what it's going to be about. It's almost certainly going to be about the Suns to some respect or another. Is it I don't think the NBA Finals will have started by then, but is it a Finals preview by then? Now, if the Eastern Conference is done in 5 and we're done in 6 or less, then like it could be a Finals preview, could be an end of season review. We could lose 4 straight. I mean,
we could.
Please don't put that karma into the world.
and if we did make the Finals, knock on extreme wood, whatever, like what does that look like? Are we just going to do live post game shows for each game? I don't know yet. So next Thursday there will be a show. It's coming into a holiday weekend, but we're doing a show. It's gonna have the Suns in it to some extent, maybe something else. We'll see. That's all. So thank you for listening. That is our Suns cast. Fuck Scott Foster. We'll see you next week on July 1st. In between episodes, you can find us on our website, objectionnetwork.com, or for new videos 7 days a week, check us out at youtube.com/objectionnetwork. We'll see you next
Fuck
time.
that, Beverley.
Oh yeah, that one too.